You may be another Asian growing up in like America, or Chinese growing up with America. But I think what makes it particularly hard for us is like we had friends that grew up like in the native culture. Like for me, I had friends growing up with the Australian culture, which were more like the more Caucasian Western upbringing, independence, being yourself, making your own decisions, being your own person. It was very much like that. Whereas Asian culture and Chinese culture in particular, it's about conforming, fitting in, respecting your parents, and doing what they wish, you know? And I think we notice it a lot more growing up in these Western countries, like for me in Australia, and of course, if you grew up in America, the distinct contrast, because our friends at school, like we'd tell them our stories, or maybe we'd be even too ashamed to share like what our parents did to us, like beat us with a stick that night, which is acceptable, you know, in Asian culture, but is not acceptable in Western culture. And we just feel so alienated and different. And it's just all about trying to fit in. I mean, for me, I was part of a first generation immigrant family, which I think hits harder than if your parents were in the country for a few more generations, because then they would have adopted more of the local culture, whether it be Australian, American, Canadian, or English, or whatever. Being the first generation, my parents grew up in China and came to Australia when they were like 30-ish or something like that. So they are 100% Chinese, you know, culturally 100% Chinese, and they don't really understand Australian culture, whereas I got exposed to Australian culture like at school, talking to my friends like, oh, what are your parents like, and making comparisons. So I think it's like a very unique experience, especially for first generation Asian families that have like immigrated to other countries. And I just want to say there are good parents and bad parents in every single culture. I'm not singling out Asian parents as like being the only ones that make mistakes. And I'm not saying it's even a bad thing. It's like a very specific culture, and I think it carries very specific way of thinking and experience that is very specific. So I just want to make a disclaimer here. I think there are really great Asian parents. I think Asian parents do some really amazing things. I'm going to call them out now before I launch into this whole other side. But you know, what I love about Asian parenting, Asian culture is, one, they teach us the value of hard work. Now, there's pros and cons to this, but they want us to be successful and they want us to be set up for life. And the way that Asian parents that show love, unlike, you know, growing up, it felt weird because, you know, my Western friends, their parents show love by giving them hugs, by saying like, I love you, by basically affirming them verbally as well as physically, and being vulnerable and sharing their feelings. That doesn't happen in an Asian household. The way Asian parents show love is to make sure you're fed. Like they will always ask, have you eaten? That's like the Chinese way of going like, how are you? Like, it's not like, how are you as a person? It's like, have you eaten? And other things like making sure that they save enough money for your education, or that they save money so they can move to a nice area so you can be around other people that will be good influences to you instead of bad influences. That's what my parents did. They saved really hard, and we lived in a much smaller place but in a good suburb because they thought that will set me up to be more successful in life because I'll be surrounded by good influences. Other things that they will pay a lot of money for your education, for tuition, for, you know, learning a new skill, anything to invest in your ability to be a well-functioning adult. And keep in mind, these things are all very practical. Like, it's nothing like lovey-dovey. There's not much like feelings to this. That's just the way the culture is. It's very practical. Are you fed? Are you clothed? Are you equipped? everything that they say that may sound harsh, they're doing it because they want what's best for you. Now, it is a little bit misguided, and maybe if you didn't grow up in like the actual country that your parents are from, it seems very alien. But I feel like if I did grow up in China with the same kind of treatment, it would feel very normal to me because all my friends would be going through the exact same things and it just wouldn't be weird.